Greetings, ladies and gentlemen from Vienna. Special greetings to my co-panelists and participants, with many thanks to LAWASIA President Chung-Wan Choi, the LAWASIA UNCITRAL Committee past chair Tim Castle, and the new chair Shreyas Jayasimha, who is moderating this session. I'm very pleased to highlight the work currently carried out by UNCITRAL's Working Group 3, which is meeting this week as we speak and as I record this message to you, and the possible solutions and approaches to address the many concerns that have been raised in the working group and beyond, of course, by the investor-state dispute settlement system as it was designed over 60 years ago. But before I start, please let me highlight how important the collaboration with the LAWASIA UNCITRAL Committee is for us in the Secretariat. As we've seen from the 3 activities we co-organized during this inaugural year, there is much interest among LAWASIA members and regional practitioners in the work of UNCITRAL at both the introductory level and in specific topics such as insolvency and ISDS, as we are discussing today. The Secretariat looks very much forward to continuing this partnership, particularly through the UNCITRAL Regional Center for Asia and the Pacific, located in Incheon, Republic of Korea. And I take advantage of this recorded message to thank my colleague Tita Kominder, the head of RCAP, for putting together with LAWASIA this very interesting and important event. So thank you very much. And in order to give you an overview of where we stand in UNCITRAL in the delivery and in the implementation of this mandate to reform investor-state dispute settlement, please let me share my screen and let me show you where we are at in Working Group 3. So to begin, I would like to recall the message that was received by UNCITRAL's, or was given by UNCITRAL's Commission to Working Group 3 in 2017. It's a broad mandate, as you can see here on the screen, with no limitation on the form that a given reform element or the given reform could take, but rather a very broad mandate to explore all the possible reform avenues to reform investor-state dispute settlement. This mandate has started to be implemented in 2017 with a first meeting that took place in November. And for the first 2 years, or a bit more than 2 years, the working group spent time first dealing with a very important stock-taking exercise, trying to review all the concerns, the issues, the problems that arise from investor-state dispute settlement. In a second step of the mandate, to identify possible reform options and see how that could be done in UNCITRAL, because not all reform of ISDS needs to be undertaken in UNCITRAL. And we are now at the 3rd stage of this mandate, which is the actual delivery of reform elements. From options, we have moved now into reform elements that form part of the entire reform package. And I'm going to show you a bit more how this is going to work. But before that, let me just tell you that this working group, contrary to other working groups in UNCITRAL, has very specific points, criteria given by the Commission in the mandate. And the most important one is that it is a reform and a mandate to be carried out at the government level. So it is it's governments, it's the state representatives that are in the front seat, in the driver's seat. Of course, we are also benefiting from inputs from all possible stakeholders, and we have about 100 plus NGOs international government, intergovernmental organizations taking part in the reform, but it's driven by states and at a with also a requirement of a decision-making level so that the work can move along. Two other additional elements of this mandate is the full transparency, which means that everything that is taking place in this working group, either in preparation, after, or during, is available on our website. You can find, including the recordings of the sessions, on the website. And the second point is that we also have, as we do everywhere in UNCITRAL, a mandate to work on consensus and by consensus, and to work on building consensus around these reform elements. So where are we currently and what is it that we are working on? Let me use an illustration which I think helps you to understand that we're trying to deliver something which is coherent, and that what the working group is doing is not adding additional inconsistencies or different avenues to an already quite atomized system, but rather to try to keep everything under one roof. And this is why we are using this little house to show you what could be a multi-door system resulting from a multilateral ISDS reform package, now that we are in the we are delivering on this agenda. So what we have already in existence in many investment treaties are state-to-state procedures and investment arbitration. What the reform would add to the system is an entry door for all investors that are covered by by a regional treaty concluded by the European Union with any of its partners, and which has already the components of an international investment court embedded into these agreements. I'm thinking of CETA, for example, of the free trade agreement between the EU and Singapore, or with Vietnam. So this first instance court would be added to the multiple doors that can be used to bring an investor-state dispute against by an investor against a state. Second additional door is a door that was already half open, that had been closed, and that many states would like to reopen, which is to allow for a level, a certain degree, or a full exhaustion of local remedies before investors can bring their disputes to an international tribunal, be it a court or be it international arbitration. What you see on both sides are two major undertakings to strengthen alternatives to arbitration. In the case of ISDS, the alternative is not to domestic courts, but it's rather an alternative to international arbitration. And this would mean strengthening recourse to mediation, which is already present, or which is envisaged in a minority of investment treaties, and in order to really be a credible option would need to feature as an equal procedure at the choice of the parties as arbitration in the treaty. So we need to strengthen mediation. There are already rules out there. There is already practice out there. But what we need is to make sure that in the treaties themselves, this possibility to go to mediation and to allow the parties to comfortably and with a lot of security go into mediation, it has to be really strengthened in the framework itself. The second side is to support the parties, and one of the issues that arises, which is the symptom, I would say, of the legitimacy crisis of investor-state dispute settlement, is the understanding that the parties are not at equal arms, and that there is a need to level the playing field, particularly for very small countries, for example, least developed countries or developing countries, given the cost, given the duration, but given also the lack of specialized and well-equipped internal teams or internal procedures that allow to face such a claim in the best possible conditions. And this could be done through strengthening of dispute prevention. There is a lot of good practice out there that only needs to be shared, and also the establishment of an advisory center that states could resort to, similarly as in the case of the ACWL, the Advisory Center on WTO Law, that functions precisely as a center where states can receive advice, but also be represented in trade disputes. So it would be the same here for investment disputes. What is going to be really new, and I would say a revolution, is at the second floor of this little house, and that is the establishment of an appeal system or an appeal mechanism that would work for the three main doors that we've seen so far. It would work as a state-to-state appeal mechanism, as a standing appellate body, or an appeal mechanism for investment arbitration, and that is really going to be the major novelty. And it will work as a second instance for a first instance investment court established for whatever countries want to become party to. This, of course, will require that there are very detailed and very difficult arrangements to be made with the ICSID Convention mechanism, because the ICSID Convention is a self-contained and mechanism which has its direct enforcement system for parties to the ICSID Convention, and of course the awards rendered under the ICSID Convention are not susceptible to appeal. The only mechanism that is contemplated is a setting aside. So this will have to be taken care of, and there are tools at the public international law level that we will be able to use for that purpose. What is important is what you find in and under the roof, and that is the need for this reform to deliver on an important element that has been farmed out over the years by the states, and that is the states' control over their treaties, because these treaties are concluded between states. The states are the masters of their treaties, and as such should also be the masters of the interpretation of their treaties. However, with the dispute settlement of these disputes arising under these treaties being farmed out to ad hoc arbitral tribunals, the states have lost the control over this interpretation, and tribunals who normally should not be interpreting but rather applying the treaty provisions have very often interpreted, and we are now at a stage where states are concerned about the interpretations that are given by arbitral tribunals to the treaties they have negotiated. Hence the need to strengthen treaty interpretation tools, and also to always bear in mind that's one of the elephants in our room, that none of what we are doing here in reforming the procedural side or the ISDS side of these investment treaties is totally innocuous and completely delinked from the substantive content of these treaties. Now, there are also a number of provisions that are more procedural in nature that will have to be developed. And here we are beginning, for instance, with rules ways to regulate third-party funding, which is an occurrence in investment arbitration of, I would say, the last 10 years, and that has really exploded in the ISDS context. The development of a code of conduct, that is precisely what the working group is discussing this week. The possibility for states to bring counterclaims, and here we're looking, I would say this is more future looking, because in the current treaties, in the wording, we don't have provisions that, or very few treaties have provisions that put some obligations on investors. But in future, if there are more of these investors' obligations, there is a need for the mechanism to contemplate these counterclaims brought by the state. Issues relating to the selection and appointment of tribunal members, particularly the lists, the need for more diversity, be it regional, be it gender, means to address at an early stage frivolous claims, also strengthening and looking at the application of denial of benefits provisions to various procedural rules. The need to also deal with or to rein in the possibility to bring multiple proceedings based on a same action or measure by the state through various arbitral and ISDS proceedings. An issue that has been brought very strongly again on the table by developing countries, particularly African countries, during the last Commission session, relates to the calculation, the standards for damages in investment arbitration. Also, the need to look into the mechanisms for reflective loss and security for costs in the case of an impecunious claimant, and when the state wins the case, which is not which happens about 50% of the time. So what is important in the delivery of this reform is that it is currently being discussed that the whole reform package will be delivered through a multilateral convention, which will be flexible in nature, in the sense that not all countries will have to sign on to all the reform elements that are in this multilateral convention. If you go back to the Little House, for example, there is this the establishment of an advisory center that will not necessarily be in place for every country, because some countries will not need an advisory center. So there will be a possibility to opt for one or the other of these elements without having to necessarily go for others. But there will also have to be a common core provisions in this treaty in order to deliver on a meaningful reform. What is to be remembered is that like the mechanism of the Transparency Convention, the Mauritius Convention, or of a recently adopted convention, which is called BEPS in the OECD, to reform, to harmonize double tax treaties, this convention will apply to the existing 3,000 plus treaties, as well as cater for any future treaties. So just to give you an idea of what the forthcoming events are, we are this week in our 41st session of the working group. We will have in the month of December, from 6 to 10 December, 5 two-hour informal meetings, which will be fully interpreted into French, which will deal with mediation, dispute prevention and mitigation, financing aspects of a multilateral permanent investment tribunal, shareholders' claims for reflective loss, and a multilateral instrument on ISDS reform, which is precisely what I was talking about as far as the delivery of this reform is concerned. We are also scheduling the work on a draft code of conduct, procedural rules reform, multilateral permanent investment course, cross-cutting issues and damages, and ADR mechanisms and dispute prevention. And the next session in February of 2022 will deal with instructions to be given to the working group, by the working group to the Secretariat, I should say, on Multilateral Advisory Center, and a first reading on a Multilateral Permanent Investment Court. This will take place in New York in the months of February of 2022. So with this, once again, referring you to our website, I could not stop this presentation without alluding to the newly developed modules on distance learning on UNCITRAL. It's very much everything you wanted to hear about or know about UNCITRAL but never dared to ask. This is what we're making available to you now through these modules. There is one on UNCITRAL and the commission and the various sessions. There's another one on harmonizing and modernizing international trade law. And the third one is delivering on the Sustainable Development Goals. So with this, I thank you very much. I'm really glad for this opportunity to share with you. I hope I haven't been too long. And I hope that we will have an opportunity to see each other live and in person in the near future. Thank you very much. Goodbye.